still on her birthday hangover. Yep. World Bigfoot Radio, we have Uncle Duke is here. Yeah, Varla is pretty. You should get her on your show, honestly. She's great. Fantastic. She is the Bombette. Lovely Jenny, good to see you here. Oh. Bombette. I made up a word.
I like that word.
I still don't see that bloody hair. That is totally bugging me.
Here, let me get it for you.
Oh, love you too. Driving me nuts. Oh. Anyways, Dirty Filth. Nice to have you here. And good evening, Boyles. Chad Smith with a great super chat. The real Chad's. I'm Chad Smith, and I donated a super chat. Thank you, Chad. Appreciate that. A super chat, by the way, is a great way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. Another great way to support us is by hitting that subscribe button, ringing that bell. Mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world. This, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free for you by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. Yes, she has returned. Varla Ventura is the author of Varla Ventura's Paranormal Parlor, Ghost Seances, and Tales of True Hauntings. Literally, this lady has a number of books out which can be found on any major bookstore. But the most important and impressive part of her resume is that once a month she gets to come on Spaced Out Radio and scare the bejesus out of us when it comes to everything to do with monsters, werewolves, ghosts, spooks, banshees, everything in between. And tonight, it's all about ghosts and werewolves. Why? Because a full moon is coming. VarlaVentura.net is her website. Varla, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I've missed you.
Oh, yes, we've missed you too. We missed you too. You're one of those people who actually commands an audience. You command it. And every time Varla is not here, I get the, where's Varla? I mean, it's like a Where's Waldo book around here.
I'll just have to make you a voodoo doll of me.
Probably.
Mm-hmm.
How you been doing?
I've been doing good. It's been, it's some interesting times. I just had Ma hadn't seen my mother in 2 years, and she came to visit me. So that was great. We had a great time. Took her to the local occult shop here, and she did a fairy Reiki session, which I wasn't really familiar with, although I've written a book on fairies. But there's a practitioner here who does some energy work, and then, which is what Reiki is. And then he calls on the fairy elementals, and he actually came out of there with tears in his eyes. And my mom came out with tears in her eyes, and they had a very profound experience. So it's been a really interesting week. It's been a lot of it's actually been a little emotional for me, seeing my mom after 2 years, and you know how that can be when you see someone you haven't seen in a long time. You notice the differences and the changes. But we had a great time. We had a great time hanging in the garden. I'm growing tons of pumpkins because what else would I grow? And so we tended the pumpkins and chatted about life, and it was really great.
You know what? It's amazing that you say that, because I saw my mom 2 weeks ago for the first time in like a year and a half.
Oh.
And my mother looks like she's already got a foot in the grave. I hate to say that. But her health is, she's struggling with her health and everything. And it just floored me. Like it was like a punch in the chest. I mean, I loved seeing my mom.
I understand
and
that.
everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was difficult, and I was like, damn, I don't like this. Like this isn't fun. You know what I'm saying?
It's not
fun at all.
I hear you. It really isn't. And it's one of those things too, where I think if you had been with her more frequently, the changes might have seemed more gradual. So it wouldn't have been quite as cut and dry or as shocking. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It hit
it's
me
a
hard.
tough thing.
I did something today that our audience doesn't even know about.
Ooh.
Last weekend, Lynn Wallington had a lovely young lady on named Carlene, who is a hypnotist and regression therapist.
Ooh.
So for an hour and a half today, I went under.
You did a past regression?
Not a past regression.
You did a hypnotherapy session.
I did a hypnotherapy session.
Wow.
And I was
fun.
out. So I have snippets of it. All right. I totally have snippets of it all. I don't remember the full thing. I know it was recorded because I gave permission for it to be recorded.
Oh, good. Yeah. So you can hear the ridiculous things you say.
and I got to tell you, I was not present when this happened.
Wow.
I was
awesome.
Completely gone. And then all of a sudden, I woke up. The being that was speaking from me literally stopped. And then the next second, I was like right there.
Dave came back
in a flash. It was like, okay, we're done. Bye. And hello? Yeah, it was nuts.
Interesting. Did you choose like a thing that you wanted? Because I've had hypnotherapy one time, and it was 20 plus years ago, and I did it to quit smoking. And it was like a friend of a friend who was studying to be a hypnotherapist, and I thought, well, I'll just they were like, well, we'll do it for practice. And I went to this woman's house, and I thought. And I went in there thinking like, it's not going to hurt me, right? And I couldn't believe it. I absolutely could not believe that I came out of there, that I went out that quickly. She said some kind of visualization. She started counting, and I thought, oh, I'm completely cognizant of everything that's going on. And then the next thing I know, she was waking me up, and I was just like, what?
I was completely out. So I ended up channeling an alien guide of mine.
Rad.
Yes. He didn't give up his name, but he was, I don't want to say he was a jerk, but he was he was very, very protective of who was trying to contact him. And why were they trying to contact him? And what was that all about?
Interesting.
Yes.
A hesitant entity.
It was a hentity, yes.
Entity.
A hentity it was.
Another word we created. We got to have a whole dictionary by the end of the night.
Yeah, totally. So I got to go over the tape again. Now I was there, Carlene was there, and Lynn Wallington was there. So it was absolutely. It was kind of cool because I've never gone fully
Very
under
cool.
like that before, ever.
Very cool. The place where my mom got this session, actually, one of they do all kinds of readings and stuff, and I was like, tarot reading, I kind of do that myself. But they do have a past life regression, and when I was a kid or teenager, there was a friend of mine, his mother did past life regressions, and a couple of people I knew had done it. And I was actually always a little I don't know. I was worried. I was like, I don't know if I want to do past life regression because I've had some pretty specific dreams, and I don't know that I was a very good person based on these dreams. So it's funny that you said that because I've been feeling it lately, and I think, I think I might just do it just to see like what's going to come through. Maybe it's going to, maybe it'll be all malarkey, but maybe it'll be something like completely that I need to hear at the time that will kind of make things make sense. Oh, that's why I'm so like this or that. So I don't know. Now that you say that you've gotten this session, it makes me think that I should copy you.
Yeah. So anyways, I ended up channeling this extraterrestrial being, and we started asking, like, what's the blockage of the show? What is holding the show back? Is it me? Is it our programming? Is it the sign of the times with the way media works these days? And basically, you know what? It was a sign of the times, and that there are people listening who need to be listening. They are interested. They love the show, but it's just a matter of timing and everything right now. And they wouldn't give a timeline that was not allowed to be answered, but it all came down to free will and keep pushing and keep going hard. So I guess that's what I need to do is...
Yeah, keep going hard, Dave.
Yeah. What else am I going to do? What else am I going to do?
Come on.
I mean, heaven forbid, why sleep at night?
What are you going to mince into the next century? Of course not.
Mince. Very nice word. Very nice usage of the word mince.
Mincing into the next
era.
It. Absolutely not. Yeah, you got to go hard. Well, that's pretty cool. Did you set that as a question? Was that your question? Or was that just what came through?
That's what came through. They were asking, and it just kind of fell out.
Yeah. Cool.
What am I supposed to do? So,
what am I supposed to do?
Yeah. What am I supposed to do? But it's kind of cool. And yeah. We totally fell in love with Carlene, Lynn, and I on a business level, not on a... but we got to figure out how we can bring her more into the family here. That's what that's what we got to do, is figure out how to bring her more into the family.
Yeah, I'm feeling like you could be really going in like a mentalism direction, like there's a lot of kind of cool topics to explore that.
Yeah.
Mind games.
but like when you're out, you are out. It is.
It's disconcerting.
Yeah, but you know what?
A little bit.
I never felt like I wasn't in control. Except when the being, whatever it was speaking from me, because it's like channeling. You're kind of over on one side watching what is going on, kind of like I'm watching you right now.
Whoops, right? Did I turn the right way? I turned the wrong way.
You turned the wrong way.
Everything's backwards on this. So.
Yeah, I had to check too. But yeah, it was definitely intense, and you know what? I'd do it again.
Yeah, what you should do is get hypnotized live on a show.
Well, I actually did.
I mean, right?
I actually did on Saturday.
Oh, you did?
And people who want to check it out, they can go to our free archives at youtube.com/spaced out radio.
Oh, I
actually did get hypnotized on the air. But I would do it again. It's for science. It's totally for science. So I would totally do it again. I'll be the guinea pig, the scapegoat, or whatever. I don't care.
I did something weird to my screen. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Hold on. Let me clean it. I tried to clean it with my finger, which was a mistake.
Wait, you didn't go with your...
There we go.
There you go.
Okay. I think we're okay now.
All right.
Yeah, it's good enough.
So
good till break.
Varla Ventura is one of the best people in the business when it comes to monsters and banshees. And tonight, we're talking werewolves because we are a day away from the full moon. And when the full moon happens, all those who have werewolves inside of them will run into the forest, rip their clothes off, and become hairy beasts of the night, ready to kill, maim, and gorge on anything they can. Do I have it right?
That's in a nutshell. And those that love them will follow them into the woods.
Wow. Hey, by the way, the crypto guru Ronald Murphy has entered the chat room on YouTube.
Oh, high stakes.
It's officially guru time. All right, so tell us about werewolves. Let's get into this.
All right. Well, we're just like jumping right in. Well, one thing that I've always found particularly fascinating about werewolves is that unlike a lot of the supernatural creatures, right? Like a vampire, for example. A vampire is very sort of human, but the werewolf has so many characteristics of a natural species, right? And it is a species that is feared or misunderstood even today, right? People think, oh, wolves are going to eat my cattle or whatever, and then they hunt them. So I think there's sort of a love-hate relationship with wolves in general, and I'm not saying myself because obviously I'm a wolf lover, but I do think that as a cultured society, we don't have the symbiotic relationship that we once had with wolves, and as a result, we have greater fear of that unknown, and I think that adds to the lore and mystique and terror of something like a werewolf. But some of them, okay, so first of all, we got the full moon happening, which is happening, tomorrow night at...
Usually happens at night.
At 8:30 or something is when it's at its fullest. And I think we all know that there's reports of strange behavior on the full moon. I used to live in the Tenderloin in San Francisco, and I can guarantee you that on the full moon, very, very strange things happened. If we've got any nurses or doctors in the or paramedics in the chat here, I'm sure you can back me up on the higher incidents and reports and sort of like strange things happening. More people coming into the ER, just a lot more mania around the full moon. So right?
And you know what? My sister and her fiance are both longtime prison guards.
Oh.
And they literally have to prepare for every full moon. Because the prisoners, not all of them, but there are a handful of prisoners in each jail that absolutely go nuts. And they have no access to the moon. They have no access to anything. They literally...
no access to the moon. You don't even get a window.
Don't even get a window, you dirty, rotten scoundrel, right? But seriously, apparently in the prison, there's a big contingent of prisoners who absolutely change their entire attitudes on full moon.
Wow. Well, that doesn't really surprise me based on, all of the research that I've done and everything I've read about that sort of behavior around the full moon. And people, so now if you think of that, right, that's just like, quote unquote, regular humans, right? There are those of us who are affected by the full moon. Some of us get more aggressive. I think that there are a lot of people that can get more aggressive. I personally feel really, obviously, like, it's kind of hard to sleep on the full moon. I think that can also be the fact that it's really bright out, so it's a little harder to sleep when it's really bright out. But I feel very antsy myself on the full moon and also the days leading up to it. So, I can see that if I were contained somehow, that I might start scratching at the walls to try and get out. So you have this in basically normal human behavior. And you can see, of course, we should organize a triple cage match with Werewolf Dogman and the Skinwalker. Yeah, who would win? Or are they all the same thing? So I think that you have that idea of just that kind of mania around the full moon. And when you get into... I like breakfast for dinner. I know you hate that, Dave, terrible. And it's terrible. Just, I know. I hope you still love me at the end of this.
Barely.
But when you have the idea of like people getting completely crazed, like ordinary, quote unquote, ordinary people having this kind of experience, one of my favorite writers, there's two authors that I always refer to when I think about werewolves, and in particular the behavior around full moon and how that can be actually quite human and yet also very wolf-like. Elliot O'Donnell, who was a wonderful Irish writer who wrote a lot about banshees. He did a lot of ghost investigations. He was kind of part of that, like, society with Yeats. And O'Donnell was a little different, though, because O'Donnell had grown up in a haunted house and came from the point of view of a believer rather than a good Catholic boy who is trying to be convinced otherwise. So his writings tend to be a little bit more open, I find. As open as a, early 1900s writer can be. But he writes pretty extensively about werewolves, as does this man named Sabine Baring Gould, who was a reverend and who traveled all around England. And one of the things he did was he wrote Onward Christian Soldiers. He was this very kind of stand-up citizen. And he also, while he was traveling around trying to convert people, recorded werewolf stories and incidences and reports. And he wrote this insanely giant book all about werewolves and everything from streams that you drink from that can counteract lycanthropy to plants that you eat that can turn you into a werewolf, like wolf's bane, for example, is an herb, a plant that has toxic properties and can actually cause you to foam at the mouth and kind of work yourself into a frenzy. So there's a whole bunch of really cool stories in there of reports of seeing werewolves. But, and this might be perhaps like the most human and also the most frightening element of werewolfism or lycanthropy, he kind of brings to mind the idea that any of us at any given time could actually have that capacity to become a werewolf, because so many of us have had that moment of complete outrage or anger, and some of us have acted on that anger, and some members of society have gone far enough to act on that anger to the point to get them, in the prison where your sister is a guard. So you have people who have gone to this extreme. On the very extreme, you might have someone like a serial killer. And on the other side, you might have someone who would otherwise be dubbed like hormonal. And you kind of have this spectrum, but his argument, which I find quite convincing, is the idea that any of us, if you've ever gone so angry that you've seen red or you've blacked out, and we're talking like when you're sober, obviously, right? If you've ever gotten like so, and I know I have, it's happened probably to many people. I mean, it's not unusual to like get so angry. I don't think it is to get so angry that you just, all you see red. There's a switch, right? There's a turning point. There's a part where you could snap. And his argument is that because of that, we all have inherited that ability to transform into a rabid beast. And so, therefore, the existence of werewolves is much more plausible.
I don't even think they exist. I hate to be the backbreaker on this one, but no, I don't think they exist. I think Dogman exists because I'm a weirdo that way. Okay. Now, you're going to have to convince me why you would believe in Dogman and not a werewolf. Because I felt it. Okay, but if you think that, what makes you think that Dogman isn't a werewolf? Oh, this is where the crypto guru. I need him in my corner for this. Okay. But you know what? We are going to run out of time before we can actually conclude this discussion. Yeah, because we only have like 15 seconds before we are going to end up going to break here at the bottom of the hour. Disappointing to find out that Varla Ventura likes breakfast for dinner, but then again, disappointing to find out Dave Scott doesn't believe in werewolves. VarlaVentura.net. Not sure if she'll be here the next half hour, but nonetheless, we will continue the show. Werewolves, we're talking about. Do you believe in them? Do you think they're real? Do Do you think people can actually transform like an ugly Decepticon? We'll find out with Varla Ventura when we come back on Spaced Out Radio. All right, we're back. Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. I see how it's going to be.
Stetson John, good to see you. Ackroyd, how's it going? Hello there, gorgeous Katie. What's happening? Creeping around her back door. That's what she wrote, not me. Let's see, who else snuck in here when I wasn't looking? John Ballerman. We got a John Ballerman sighting, everyone. All right.
I'm reading the comments now.
Oh, yeah, you have to.
I'm going back through.
Katie says I'm looking good. Brock Williams, what's happening? He was there. Ross Lambda, how you doing? Guillerme, what is happening, my French friend? Vive les habitants. Even though I'm a Canucks fan. Mm-hmm. And an Oilers fan.
These are funny. My friend blacks out when super angry. We call it a grape snow cone moment.
Let me see here. Gabe Roca has arrived, everyone. The Gabe Roca has returned. Mm-hmm. I had tacos for dinner, just letting you all know. 2 nights in a row that Dave's pounded back tacos with hot sauce. Can Bigfoots mind read? I think they can. Do I have proof? No. Oh, Jose. Look at Jose. Varla looks lovely, and Dave is looking good tonight. I don't know who Jose is hitting on, but it's working. Pick me, pick me. Let's see here. Devin, what's happening? Unconditional love and gratitude, my friend.
Your audience is very funny.
Yeah.
Very clever.
Yeah. You got to watch out for Mennonite Abe, though. Apparently he has 6 toes on his feet. I know.
That's kind of cool.
It is kind of weird, though. David Paulson, welcome to the chat room. And who else came in here? Jeremy Jones, what's happening? Dave is going to get the taco shits. No, that's not till tomorrow. We're safe until tomorrow. Let's see here. Grandpa wants to know if they're hairy toes. I don't know. If UFO Toronto was here, we'd get his opinion because his nickname is Meaty Toes. Mr. Businessman, what's happening? Welcome to the channel. Mm-hmm. Where's your guitar pick there, Varla? I know you always got a guitar pick near you.
I have a guitar.
You want to jam?
Oh, it's very out of tune. I don't think so. I don't think you want to jam with me.
Oh, I'm terrible.
Well, I think I'd probably make you look good.
I don't know.
That's pretty bad. That's pretty out of tune. Ooh, harsh. Ooh. Yeah. Well, that's, I don't know. I'm in like a lower level, so
you and I are probably even. We're probably even. I'm
evenly out of tune.
Yeah. I do know how to
We have nice voices, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have 1 minute.
Okay. What do you want to do?
Bingo. Hopscotch?
Rochambeau? Are
No.
werewolves real? Rochambeau.
We're not Rochambeauing.
Do you call it that in Canada?
Yeah. It's French. Why wouldn't we?
That's what I'm saying.
Rochambeau. All right, we got 20-some seconds left. Big thank you to Apollo, to Gorgeous Jenny, Ed Clater, Chad, and Andrew for the awesome super chats tonight. It's a great way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis, so thank you so much for taking the time to do so. Big thank you to all of our new subscribers who are tuned on in and enjoying the show. Big thank you to the Crypto Guru for listening and really promoting that breakfast is not a dinner food. We appreciate that. Here we go. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are, this beautiful planet we call Earth. Want to remind you that if you miss portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on tonight with Varla Ventura's Our Cryptid World, varlaventura.net. All you got to do is walk into a bookstore, look for the Weird and Strange section, and there is Varlay's book right there. Books with the plural. Varla, welcome back.
Thank you.
All right, werewolves. I don't believe they're real. You believe they're real. So there are people on this planet that will, on a full moon, change from human to dog.
Now, I didn't say that I believe they're real necessarily. As with any kind of supernatural creature, I think there's a lot of evidence to support that they are real. So I believe in most of the accounts of werewolves, and I do think that there are and were werewolves. However, I think that there are a lot of actual clinical cases that were misdiagnosed. In fact, someone had asked about lycanthropy. That is actually a disease. There are two versions of kind of medical diagnoses, right? So if you get lycanthropy, you believe that you are a werewolf, much as some people believe that they're vampires and will attack people. And we're not talking about the friendly vampires that I like to hang out with. We're talking about like people who have this psychological compulsion to feed on blood. And then you also have hormonal disorders that cause hair to grow all over your body. So I also think that people have, just as they have with witches for, thousands of years, place the blame on certain natural behaviors on something like a supernatural creature that is a werewolf. So I'm not arguing that on the full moon, your neighbor is going to turn into a werewolf, but I do believe that there's a possibility that that can take place. Also, I don't understand how Dogman can't be a werewolf. Like, what's the argument there that that's not the same thing as a werewolf? Because it's a hybrid creature, right? Is it that it doesn't transform? I mean, I'm not a Dogman expert, so I don't really know. But to me, that feels like it's in the same category as werewolves. So, what's the belief there about Dogman specifically?
Well, I think Dogman is a creature that is running around the forest on either 2 legs or 4 legs, but does not change from human to animal.
Okay, so there's no shape-shifting, there's no kind of transformation there. So so to me, that isn't necessarily a marking point of whether or not something, to me, they all kind of fall into that sort of cryptid canine category. And I think that it's entirely probably just as the wolf has been evolved into a toy poodle, it completely makes sense that something like a werewolf, there's also a lot of, original stories about werewolf-like creatures and shapeshifters that have transformed and been shunned from society, which is sort of something I was going to say earlier, is that we have this relationship with werewolves where we kind of feel sorry for them, at least in a pop culture kind of way, versus something like a vampire that we might feel a little differently about. I think we feel sort of lustful toward the vampire, but the werewolf, we feel like, oh, there's this thing. I mean, maybe it's because Teen Wolf put this idea in our heads, but there's this thing where a creature a human or a human-like creature transforms without, beyond their own control. So, I don't know.
Well, I can say this, that Todd here brings up a good point. Says, that's my argument with Dogman. How do you know they don't transform? No one has ever seen one long enough to know.
Well, that's a really good point. I mean, maybe that's why the sightings are so elusive, because it is actually transforming. We don't really know. I mean, that is both the beauty and the frustration of cryptids or any kind of like supernatural exploration, is that we all have had experiences, or some of us have had experiences. We've done research. We're going on instinct. That's what we're looking to find out in the night, right? Like, what are these things? But it's pretty hard to, be super definitive about whether or not these things are all one thing. I think what's important to remember is, in the world of the supernatural, at least I believe this, in the world of the supernatural, which is also akin to the world of the fairy kingdom or the otherworldly kingdom in which these creatures reside, that it isn't you're this and then you're that before my very eyes. We look at things so black and white and in such a linear fashion on this side of the fence, right? And this real world, that we expect everything to fit into a category, a nice, neat little category. And one thing that I've learned, certainly in the folkloric record and in the experiences that I've had, and I've been talking with people and the people I've interviewed, is that there isn't one, you think of the fairy kingdom and you think it's these little things that flit about, but there are hundreds of different creatures that fit into these descriptions that go cross-culturally. From the duende to the gnomes, there's all these different kinds of creatures that could technically fall into this cryptid, this kind of unknown category. And so when we really want to say it's exactly like this, like we saw in the movie in 1954, that is just it limits us, it limits our belief. And when we do that, then we start closing our minds off and we can't actually see the things that are around us, like Bigfoot and the other kind of experiences that we want to have. I don't know. I mean, like, is Bigfoot necessarily not in that case? Like, I feel like it kind of fits in that category in a way as well, because it has this human beast thing going on. Maybe we're just trying to put a human face on it. Everybody likes to put cute little faces on the stuffed Sasquatch at the gift shop. But it's a much more complex thing than that. I don't know.
In your circles, which are weird people, have you ever met someone who claims to be a werewolf?
I haven't ever met someone that claimed outright to be a werewolf. I have met people that, as you know, I have met many people who have claimed to be vampires, lots and lots of witches, quite a few people who claim to be sort of otherworldly. I mean, I did meet a guy once who claimed to be a centaur, but honestly, I think he was just on drugs. So I can't, he transformed in his own mind. I've never met anyone that has claimed to be a werewolf. However, I have heard a couple of stories from people in my circles about having an experience where they felt like they were about to go beyond that sort of precipice that most of us can pull back from. And that was, around the full moon and sort of like running amok in the forest. And The other thing to keep in mind is that just because werewolves are kind of, the idea is that they transform at the full moon and then they go and hunt and kill, that's not necessarily true. That just when the transformation, historically, that's when the transformation is supposed to take place because it's affecting the body and it's affecting the hormones. But, they could be out there gallivanting about in the dark of the new moon, and we just don't think of it that way. So I just think there's a big connection between us as humans and the things that we know, evidentiary things that we know happen at the full moon, and the historic and folkloric record about werewolves. And it's enough to make you pause and think, well, I mean, why not? Why couldn't that happen? Although I think it's a complex thing. Again, I don't think it's linear, all this or all that. You also have people who are recording stories, who are going around recording these pagan rituals where people are donning, skins and dancing around fires, trying to invoke something by the light of the full moon. And that's recorded by the clergyman as some kind of, vicious beast, when in fact it's like a fertility ritual or something like that, right? So you take all those things with the grain of salt.
I get that. I do understand, and I get that. And, we do have to take everything. But you know what? You can't have your own rules. I realize in 2021 society, you could be anything you want. If I decided tomorrow that I wanted to be an octopus, I would duct tape 6 other arms on me. I would. Then you could just call me an octopus, an octodave, or whatever, right? You can be anything you want these days.
Well, then you'd be a squid because you'd actually have 10 limbs, but you have your 2 feet.
Darn it. Okay, I would make 4 more. How about that? 4 more. So I don't want to be a squid.
Okay.
Or which one? I want to be a cuttlefish.
Kraken? Don't you want to be a kraken?
No, I want to be one of them cuttlefish, so that way I could go. My skin can turn neon. Right?
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll get my body tattooed in glow in the dark ink. So that way, when I go in front of a black light or something, I glow. That would be awesome. I'm a Cuddle Dave. That's what I'm going to be.
Cuddle Dave.
A Cuddle Dave. Okay. All right. So anyways.
Everyone loves a Cuddle Dave.
But you can't. I struggle with this because you can't sit there and say, well, I want to be a werewolf, but I'm only going to be a werewolf in the definition that I want to be a werewolf. If you're going to be a werewolf, you got to do it right. You got to go kill, go bite a deer on the neck, maybe a rabbit, all right, chase a few cats around, scare some kids, have to be teenagers, okay?
Naturally.
You got to do that stuff. Don't just sit there and say, well, you know what, I'm a vegan werewolf. No, you can't do that. Werewolves don't eat kale, okay? They're not on a tofu diet with quinoa everywhere. I know it's pronounced quinoa, okay, but I prefer quinoa. All right.
I'm putting my stake in the ground on this one.
Yeah.
Well, I think if there's actually, I would be very curious if this, to me, werewolves actually fall more in the same category from the point of view as a writer and a researcher. They fall more into the same category in terms of people willing to talk about it, people willing to believe in it, people love to read the stories as mermaids. Everybody loves a good mermaid story. Everyone likes to think about mermaids and sea serpents. But when you really get down to it, you don't get very many people coming forward saying, I saw this thing, I have this family story. And it's the same thing with werewolves. It's very, very, very obscure. Versus something like, seeing UFOs, paranormal experiences, unexplained cryptids that people have spotted in the night, the unusual Sasquatch, all of these kinds of things. There's more talk about those. I don't know why that is.
Right. So I get that, but you can't do it on your own terms. You can't just sit there and say, well, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, I'm going to be a werewolf, and then during Lent, I'm not going to werewolf it up.
Yeah, I don't think that if you really were a werewolf, you would have that much control over it. I think it probably builds like it's like a serial killer who drowns, whatever. I don't even want,
That's a little harsh.
Well, I mean, it happens when they're a kid, and then this kind of like mentality stays in place, right? So maybe there's something to being a werewolf along, you're born with this desire, and then it's not until you're 45 that you finally just, go for it and take your shirt off and run into the woods. I don't know.
I don't
either. Live in the woods, so.
Well, I do, and I don't see any werewolves out there. I mean, there's a lot of
coming for you now.
There's a lot of strange stuff that happens in the woods. Mm-hmm. Not gonna lie. I don't know what is going on in the woods. I'm sure there's a lot more going on in the woods that we can't even process. Whether it's Bigfoot, Dogman, gnomes, wood nymphs, anything. I do little people, that First Nations people talk about. I think there's
and things you've seen. Things you have specifically seen and been unable to explain, right? So my argument is just like, why draw the line at werewolves? That to me, that it just seems like, drawing a line there. I mean, sure, we've all got to have our boundaries. I understand that. But when you draw the line there, it's someone else could very well turn around and say, well, I don't believe in Sasquatch.
That happens all the time.
Yeah, it happens constantly.
I don't get it. Don't get those people. Yeah. I work with a couple of them.
Non-believers.
Yeah. What do you do? By the way, Goddess Michelle says, hello, Varla Ventura, love you, and she'll have to listen to the episode tomorrow in the archives because she is working tonight.
Okay, well, love you too, and thanks for chatting.
Yes, I agree.
We love Goddess Michelle.
I agree. And hello to Merle in the chat room. Merle! Where were you last month with Varla Ventura as our guest? Oh, no, taking a day trip, trying to become a werewolf. That's where you were, a vegan werewolf.
Come on, Merle, back me up here.
Exactly. We've got 7.5 minutes before we got to go to break at the top of the hour. Varla Ventura is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. VarlaVentura.net is her website. And I got to ask you, sticking with werewolves here, where do we see the concentration of these alleged sightings happening?
Two kind of main regions, at least from what I've garnered, are a lot of the Scandinavian and Nordic countries, especially with some of the traditional tales, like the lycanthropic streams. Of course, we have to remember that we had the berserkers, right, who would basically don themselves in skin and take some kind of ephedrine-based plant and work themselves into a frenzy and go into battle, right? This was like the Norse trick to intimidate their opponents. But also, I think North America, you have some of the original werewolf stories coming from Wisconsin, not terribly far from where we see a lot of the Dogman sightings, just going full circle here. But you do have quite a few sort of original stories about werewolves and shape-shifting and that kind of transformation. So I'd say like North America and Scandinavia. But of course, you do have some in Russian folklore as well.
Now, are they mainly in populous areas or in smaller rural towns?
I mean, I think to be a werewolf, one must have a good stand of woods. So it's probably going to be, a lot more, a little town in the middle of a big woods. In the Scandinavian countries, well, especially in the northern parts of Finland, you actually have the tundra. So you have like the kind of, snowy Arctic wolf up there. And that's where you get a lot of the pretty intense werewolf stories about people being torn limb from limb. And, there's also the idea that it is someone who has sort of lost their, gone the shining in the winter, right? That someone has actually lost their mind. That's sort of what the Wendigo really is. It's this a human who has gone to the other side and is insatiable and is like insatiably hungry, often who cannot handle the pressures and the starvation of winter. So I think that the werewolf also comes out of that. And it's completely plausible to imagine somebody getting to this extreme, extreme hunger, extreme emotional state that would kind of go into a frenzy and possibly attack the other people in their family or their clan or their village or where, depending on what part of the world it is, and then be sort of banished for that and then feared and looked for upon the full moon. So there's, a lot of stories that involve that kind of dead of winter. And then when things defrost, you can find those streams that are the antidote and the plants that are the antidote to this kind of frenzied behavior. But I know we don't have a ton of time left, but there are some actual scientific reasons that we know that we can attribute to werewolves, one of which is ergot. Now, ergot poisoning, which was a mold that was on rye bread that was ground up, is basically responsible for the witch trials in the 1600s throughout Europe, because people were basically taking this and it was causing hallucinations. And they were saying, oh, little Sally so-and-so is flying on a broom and there's werewolves in the woods. And so everything was sort of being blamed on these supernatural creatures. Now, food for thought, were people actually, of course they're having these hallucinations, but were these hallucinations causing them to see things that were there that they couldn't see otherwise? I think that's kind of the question about going into that altered state. Are we just able then to see things that some people can see without any kind of ergot poisoning?
So people who think they're werewolves, as we got 3 minutes to go, what are some of the symptoms that we should look inside of ourselves to see if we are part werewolf?
Itchy, angry, excessively emotional, hair growing in places that it hasn't grown before, cravings such as cravings for blood or very raw meat, and basically kind of just misanthropic behavior that makes you wish that you could, do something a little more than punch your neighbor.
Play hockey.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm
so there you go. We have a lot more
werewolf.
vices now, right? We have vices. Yeah.
I
Play
like my
hockey,
steak.
punch someone.
I like my steak medium rare. I love body checking someone into the boards, and if you got to give them a little shot, you have to. All right. I got hair growing in my ears since my 40s started.
Okay, see?
That was a little odd. What was the other ones?
You're going through changes. Itchy? Did I say itchy?
I'm always itchy. I've always been itchy.
Extreme emotion and anger and, desire to rip people limb from limb.
I'm Ukrainian who suffers from depression and anxiety.
Mm-hmm. But here's the... Right, you're a werewolf. I think I'm glad that we... Next time you go into trance session, right? Next time you go into hypnotherapy, I think that the truth is really going to come out, and you're gonna be whole with your Ukrainian werewolf self.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Boom.
Yeah. Nope. Not at all.
No.
Not at all.
Maybe.
Not feeling it. I'm not feeling the urge to run into the forest and tackle deer and bite them on the neck or the back of the neck, much like cougars do.
Fair enough. Now you're safe for now.
Yeah, I don't want to wrestle with bears. Bigfoot.
No. Or alligators or...
No alligators up here.
No. I mean, I don't want to wrestle with alligators. I'm just saying.
And no big snakes here either, which is nice.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
I just learned there are no poisonous spiders in this area that I live. I've lived all my life with life-threatening spiders right at my fingertips. And here I am, thinking that they were everywhere, and apparently they aren't.
Nice. It's a Mandela effect. That's what it is. Varla Ventura, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we are going to go to break here at the top of the hour, and we always love it when Varla Ventura is here as our guest, as she appears once a month here on Spaced Out Radio for our Cryptid World. My goodness, I'm starting to sound like Elmer Fudd. Our Cryptid World with Varla Ventura, the queen of the cryptids. We'll be back right after this. We're going to get into some ghost stories, find out what's happening on the evil realms of the paranormal, because that's what we do around here when Varla's here. It's all dark and macabre. But she loves it that way. VarlaVentura.net is her website. We'll be back after this. All right. I'm going to run my doggies out. You can talk if you want. I haven't muted you.
Oh, I said okay.
I know.
I'm going to do
that.
Oh.
You can hang out with the audience. You can read their chat, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
I can. I put my glasses on. Yeah.
I'll be right back.
All right.
Varla Ventura.
Okay. Okay, so I did this last time. This is what I'm going to say. I did not log in properly with the way that Dave sent me the link. And so if I go over to the YouTube to actually correspond with you, last time I disconnected. So when Dave came back for break, I wasn't on here, which is not good. So I'm going to try and do it right this time so I can actually chat with you. But I can't guarantee that I'm not going to bump the wrong thing here. So let me see. We go here. We go here. Okay. Found it. No. Can I mute this? Yes. Okay, let's see. No. That didn't work. Well, that didn't work. Didn't work. Ah! I didn't think ahead. Let's see. God. Really showing my age here, you guys. Okay, let's see. Okay. I think I got it. We just gotta keep this muted. Okay. I did it. I think. Hold on. Oh, yeah. Nate, that would have been really easy. You could just speak out responses to the chat if you want. That would have been a lot better. Okay, I'm going back to that. American Werewolf in London had the best. Yeah, still pretty cool. Okay, I made it. Just in time for Dave to come back.
Dave's back.
I navigated the technical difficulties, figured out how to chat, and then one of your much smarter than me members here said, you can just speak out loud to the chat because,
Yeah.
So.
Hey, there's Super Ben from UFO Garage. By the way, Ben, yours in Joe's hair was looking fantastic tonight on your show. The lovely and talented Angela Wilbert, thank you for coming on in. And thank you. Who else is here that showed up? Varla Ventura's in the chat room, everyone. Varla Ventura. Howard S., good to see you. Smoky Mountain Wanderer, nice to have you here. And let's see, who else is here? I think we're caught up. All right. Big thank you to Apollo, to Jenny, Ed, Chad, and Andrew for the amazing super chats. It's a great way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. Thank you to all the regulars who are in our chat room, including Mr. Cowley. Welcome back to the show. Oh, Mr. Cowley loves his spaced out radio. Ross Smith, how you doing? And
you're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Here we go with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Thank you to everyone tuning us in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. It's thiocoprolite. Thiocoprolite is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. Howard in our chat room says to Varla, horn-rimmed glasses, deep V-neck blouse, and leaning way into the camera. Thought this was an OnlyFans page for a second there. Wow.
Varla. Leave, Dave. Don't leave. Don't leave again.
Oh, we love our audience here on Spaced Out Radio. Thank you so much for everybody tuning us in. Varla's website, varlaventura.net. You can find all of her incredible books at any major bookstore and online as well. Varla, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. We love you here.
Thank you.
Yes. We were talking werewolves. Now we're going to switch over to paranormal and the dark side, because everybody is always out there. I want a paranormal experience. I want ghosts to run through my house. I want to be able to communicate with the other side. That would be so cool, but for some, it really isn't, is it?
I mean, I think that it can be quite frightening and disturbing for a lot of people, especially when they don't necessarily identify as someone who can see ghosts or experience things. Oftentimes that first experience can be the one that kind of makes or breaks whether or not you'll stick with the paranormal. if you have a very terrifying experience, it might, you might be a hot stove toucher, right? You might actually continue to explore the paranormal to try and find out what happened. But for other people, things just kind of come and go. I myself am a little bit more of the curious person. My paranormal experiences have all been, knock wood, but actually, I don't really want to knock wood because I wouldn't mind if they were a little scarier. Most of my paranormal experience, all of my paranormal experiences really have been not particularly frightening. Definitely a few that were more on the scary spectrum and the confusing spectrum than the, beautiful, comforting spectrum. But I have surrounded myself by people who seem to be magnets for the paranormal. And so I'm always fascinated when there are more disturbing things at play. So, like, for example, my friend, I think I mentioned her last time, she lives in a house in Portland that is, not only is it haunted, but it's just seems to be getting more and more haunted the more time she spends there, to the point that, there's strange noises in the basement. She called the police thinking there was someone in her basement, and there wasn't anything down there when they went there. So things are missing, objects are moving around. It's kind of really been ramping up. And actually, I know that it scares her, although she's a very strong person. So she tries to kind of, work through it rationally. And she's been surrounded by ghosts all of her life. But when you see a, 9-foot bent-necked shadow creature passing behind you as you're looking into the mirror, it's pretty hard to be like, yeah, I'm okay with this. Right? I mean, kind of scary.
Tough. It is tough. Well, let's be honest. That's just not normal.
No, it's not.
It's totally not. But for a lot of people, the paranormal isn't about the little things that go bump in the night, or the car keys that go missing from the counter. You look all over your house, and 10 minutes later, they're back on the counter. It's not like that. I mean, from everything from poltergeist activity to being pinned down in your bed, there is a dark side to the paranormal activity that's out there.
Oh, sleep paralysis is probably one of the things that is most consistently reported and is the most terrifying. And I've certainly experienced a variation of it. I've interviewed many people who have had that, and probably a lot of people listening tonight have experienced some degree of sleep paralysis, essentially waking up and not being able to move, frequently coupled with a sighting or some kind of entity being in the room. Actually, I learned a long time ago that sleep paralysis can be that moment in which you have not returned. If you believe in astral travel and being able to leave your body and go into the astral plane or whatever, there's a time when your soul is kind of like you're going back into your body, and sometimes you can get caught in between. And you start to sort of have consciousness before you're fully returned, and that you're unable to move. And that also, you can also bring things back with you and then see sightings and entities, which I've heard the full spectrum of everything from something very shimmery to something very dark and full of scribbles that kind of had a sort of an electromagnetic energy that seemed to pop as it crept down the hallway. There's a lot of things that are pretty scary.
What causes a lot more of that negative paranormal energy? Is it the spirit itself, or is it the energy in the house that's brought in by the people who are there?
Yeah, or is it the people themselves, right?
Right.
It's probably a case-by-case scenario. I mean, I think for some people they can be attractants. And I think with things from the spirit realm, there are certain people who are more open to that communication, whether it's willingly or just by gifts that they were born with and may not even be aware of. They can be attractants. There are also people who are more vulnerable to that because of being empaths, because of being maybe having these kind of gifts. And I'm just going to close out this other window because I'm convinced I'm going to unmute the YouTube and just mess everything up. So, and then I also think that I kind of believe in all of the different things. I don't think there's just like one kind of ghost or one kind of haunting. I think that a place can be haunted, that a place can, have residual energy. It can have, the memories of horrific things. I think that restless ghosts and hungry ghosts can be, unrequited deaths, basically either unavenged deaths or sometimes just non-ritualized deaths, where the body wasn't properly cared for or the person wasn't sort of shepherded into death. And so in a, meaningful fashion. And so those can cause hauntings. So those aren't necessarily going to cause anger and scratchings and things like that. Interestingly, there are a lot of accounts in the fairy kingdom of things that sound very much like poltergeists, where you might wake up and you have scratches and bruises, or, your bed is being shaken, or just things that are a little more violent, where they actually interfere with your body. And that has always made me wonder, are we actually describing the same thing? Only in, the 1600s in Ireland, we called it a hobgoblin. And in, 2021, we call it a poltergeist. Is it actually kind of the same entity or unseen thing that takes different forms? But there are a lot of things that can cause... Another thing about kind of the dark and frightening side is that I think that we frequently dismiss when children have paranormal sightings and put the idea into their heads that it's just a dream, that it's nothing there, because our instincts are kind of like, okay, let's just comfort them so they're not screaming and crying in the night. And by doing so, we're actually saying to them, hey, you what you're seeing, which you may well be seeing, you can't tell me about it. Pretend it's not real. And that can actually cause more fear than just saying, okay, tell me about it, describe it. Maybe it was like great Uncle Harry coming to say hi or whatever. I don't know, So there's kind of a history of that fear. I'm not saying that is why people have negative experiences, but I do think that that's why the paranormal can get a negative view in general, because we go into it thinking like, I would never want to be in stay overnight in a haunted house, or I don't know.
What's a spooky story that's been brought to your attention regarding a negative entity?
Ooh, so many. Okay, well, there's been a lot of... so as I said, for me, most of my experiences, they might sound kind of scary to other people, but they weren't particularly negative or scary to me. I've certainly been tapped and kind of smacked in the head, and there's been things that have sat down on a seat next to me and on my bed, and certainly heard a lot of things, and actually had a few visual sightings of dark shadows moving and things like that. But none of those things really gave me the really scared me, made me think, oh, I got to move out of here right now. We're selling this place. But one of the scariest stories, and I'll probably get it a little bit wrong, is because he told it to me so long ago. And I've told a few of his other stories. His stories are always in my books. He's a really good friend of mine. I call him Pirate Chris for good reason. And he's the one who I've told a story a few times about, or at least once on this show, about him being at his property and hearing this crazy moan that kind of came up from the hillsides.
I don't recall this one.
You don't recall that one? Well, I'll tell a couple of his, because his are the scary ones. He's a person that is not necessarily easily scared, and yet very terrifying things can happen to him. And I think he's just a communicator. I think he has a lot of psychic ability and natural kind of magnet toward the unusual. He's an archaeologist by trade. So first of all, just to go back to the moaning. So he's on his property one night, and he's he had bought this property. He had property that he lived next to his grandparents, and he'd had that property since he was a kid. Basically, since he was like a teenager, he had been paying off this property, but it was a property where he had grown up right next to it. And then he had acquired the next piece over. So my point in saying that is that he was very, very, very familiar with these woods, right? These were not woods that he hadn't spent a lot of nights in. I mean, as a little boy, he had combed every inch and, stabbed every tree and done all of the things that a little boy growing up in the forest does. So he's very familiar with this territory. And so he was just on his property one night and he was cleaning brush, and on the property there was a well and there was a wellhead. So there's kind of like a little house type thing where he had been staying. He would clear out the property. They were fixing to build the house, and he would clear it out, and then he would kind of stay the night, and he would like work the weekend, and then he would go back, on Monday with his wife, and they would, just go about their weekly work and whatever. So he's out there, he's by himself, and he's spent all day clearing brush, and he's going to settle down for the evening, and he hears this moan. It is this insane sound that at first he thinks that a friend of his has pulled up at the bottom of his driveway and is putting all of his, is playing like a synthesizer, this discordant, weird sound, or an animal is mating or an animal is dying, or something is happening, but he can't quite figure out what it would be. And then it stops. And when it stops, it's complete absence of sound. There's no reverberation. There's nothing coming up from down below. It's just completely truncated sound. And so he thinks, well, that was weird. I've never heard anything like that, but I'm going to go about my business. Not a few seconds later, it starts again. And this time it's closer. This loud, outrageously deep moaning, so loud that it's guttural and he can kind of feel it. And so at this point, he's, 6'4" man, kind of starting to like lean back into this doorway a little bit and kind of look around, and not quite sure if this is something he should stay outside and figure out what it is. So he kind of steps back into the the little casa he has there, and the sound stops, and it stops again, completely truncated, no reverberation, no kind of like any essence of the sound anymore. So that doesn't make any sense to him. And then it comes a third time, just a few seconds later, and this time it is right outside the casa, and the bottles on, little things on the windowsill, the glass is rattling. He can feel it. He can feel that there's something kind of surrounding this little cabin, and he's just kind of sitting there like, well, what? I'm not sure what this is. I don't know what to do. This is really, really strange. And then it stops. It goes away. He never hears it again. He actually can't tell me this story when his wife's around, because they live on that property now. And she's like, I don't want to hear that story again. It's nope. Because she spends a lot of time alone on that property. So he, a couple days later, chats up a neighbor, and the neighbor down the hill had heard something that he described kind of similarly, that he heard it once, and it ended with a splash in the pond. So to this day, we've looked up all kinds of, he's an archaeologist, and he specializes in indigenous Californian cultures. So he's looked up all kinds of things, and he's, talked to the elders, and we still don't know what it is. So that's kind of that we just call it the thing that moaned in the woods, and we still aren't entirely sure what it is. And he hasn't heard it again to this day. I have actually, and of course the whole story is even better, because when he told me I was on that property, the house was mostly built, and guess where I was sleeping? In that little casa. So of course, it's made it even scarier. But he told me a couple stories years before that about being a very young kid, very young, like under 5, I think, and seeing what I can only sort of equate with anyone who's listened to a lot of the Jim Harold campfire stories or anything like that, or the ghost to ghost stuff, will be familiar with some of the descriptions of the Shadow Man. But at the time, when he had told me the story, we didn't really have as many descriptions. So it kind of sounds like a shadow man, but the thing is it wasn't just like a black, outline of a man-like thing. It was actually a person in a shadowy person in shape that had electrical currents, kind of like, he called it was like it was scribbled. It was like this creature had just been sort of scribbled, and it followed him. And he was very little, and it would follow him around the house, and he would hide in his closet, and it would actually recur and come back night after night after night, and really tormented him for a long time. But then when they left that house, he didn't see it anymore. So we kind of speculated that it was something that was related to that place. But, he was so little. Yeah, it was. That is pretty. I mean, can you imagine if your child came to you and said, not only did I see a shadow, but I saw like a scribble monster that wants to like chase me down the hall and get me? Like, that's pretty scary. So, yeah.
Are a lot of these angry ghosts tied to the property or the home? So, for instance, let's say you have somebody who died 100 years ago, and they're the person who, logged all the trees, built the foundation of the house, lived there for 20 years, died, and now the home has gone through numerous hands over the decades because, let's face it, people move, and now the person is just really upset because, or the ghost is really upset because he doesn't like how they've painted the walls or how they've, redone the gutters or whatever. Do we get a lot of that?
I've heard a lot of stories about people kind of saying that there's like some people can live in harmony. They'll just say, oh, that's the little old lady who used to live in this house before. So I've heard a lot of stories of people describing kind of, this sort of acceptance. But also I think that there have been quite a few where, for whatever reason, just like people, right, that ghost just did not get along with the person occupying. I won't name names, but there were a couple places where there was a guy who had a really severe drug addiction, and people had lived harmoniously with this. It was one of those houses where people lived, and then the next group of people kind of moved in, and it was just like a perpetual rental house. And there had been accounts of this ghost for many, many years. Most of the people who lived there had this, like, oh yeah, that's just the ghost of the yellow house. And there was one person in particular who had a very, very, very intense drug addiction. And that person had some pretty negative experiences, but everyone in the house actually started experiencing things such as instead of something just moving, things would fall and hit you, fall off a shelf and hit you on the head. Not like constantly, but enough that if you were alone in the house, you kind of, kept all the curtains open and things like that. Now, none of those things happened to me specifically, but I do remember being in that house and having a couple of really positive experiences over the years. And so in terms of paranormal encounters, or like kind of seeing or waking up in the night to go use a bathroom and you kind of see this ghostly figure in the kitchen or whatever. But I don't know what happened after that. Once that person moved out, I don't know if they just like tried to do an exorcism or really what happened. Because I lost touch with a lot of those people for probably really obvious reasons. So I don't know. I mean, I think there's definitely behavior can exacerbate a negative experience with a ghost or an entity.
You know what I was just thinking while you were saying that? How weird would it be if you, say, have the ghost of the original owner of a 100-year-old house, and then some ghost from the house being like 50 years old comes on in, and those two ghosts are now battling each other because they hated each other when the second ghost lived in the house. Maybe they smoked in it or whatever, and the other one didn't like it. I don't know. Or maybe they ripped up the hardwood floors that everybody prays is underneath their carpet or linoleum. I don't know. I mean, but that would be weird.
Yeah, like a ghost angry at the new ghost resident, right? Because actually, so
hold that thought, because if you got a story about that, I want to hear it.
I kind of do, yeah.
Excellent.
I kind of do.
Varla Ventura is here tonight on Spaced Out Radio. VarlaVentura.net. You can find all of her books online or in any major bookstore. Our Cryptid World with the lovely and talented Varla Ventura, who even did her hair for the show tonight. Looks fantastic. We'll be back with more Spaced Out Radio after this. And we're clear. Hector, what's going on down in Mexico, my friend?
Oops.
I heard the guitar.
Oops.
Uh-huh.
I hit it. All right. I am not a she-wolf. Like a Megatron ghost. Good times.
That's how we roll around here. Varla Ventura.
Just taking off your headphones, huh?
Yeah, it's that time. See, if I curl my hair up like that, I look like Will Ferrell in Zoolander.
Nice.
I invented the keyboard tie.
You could do that for Halloween.
Yeah. It's my punk hair right now.
Could be fun.
My grunge rock hair. Hold on. There we go. Mennonite Abe. Dave wonders why he can't get to the next level with this crowd rolling with him.
No, this is the next level.
Dave needs gnarly wooden barrettes.
Cool. You should get like a gnome headband or something.
I got a gnome.
Yeah, but like a headband, you know?
I can put my headband on if you want. Do you want me to put my bandana on? Does that make you feel good?
Yeah, do it.
All right.
And we'll see who's really watching.
Nobody's really watching. The things I do to make my listeners or my guests happy. Here you go, Varla. Gotta make sure.
Am I going to regret this?
No.
Oh my God. Now you look like a wrestler. What does that say?
It's Appetite for Democracy from Guns N' Roses. Hold on, I can't even see if I'm straight or not. Oh, there we are. Oh, wrong way. There we go.
Oh, I'm glad I'm not. It's not just me that gets it backwards.
Yeah. There you go.
All right.
Hold on. My hair looks like shit now. What the hell is
Ready
that?
to rock. You might want to take it off.
Good.
Okay.
I'm good. There we go. Now I'm good. Just for you, Varla Ventura.
All right. Now
you.
we're ready.
Yeah.
Gnarly wooden barrettes be damned. You've got the headphones. I mean, the headband and the headphones.
We can't handle this level of schmexy. David, Abe, do you actually listen to the Chinese Democracy album? In my opinion, Chinese Democracy is actually the number 2 album behind Appetite for Destruction. It is a fantastic album. It doesn't get the credibility that it deserves because it was made with all the fill-ins and not the original members. But it is a great album. And you got to give it a try. Just let yourself... I had to let myself just, ooze into it. And I was like, it's like when you stick your toe in testing the water to see if it's cold or not. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, it's cold. And then you pull it out. Then you're like, well, I'm going to try it again. Then I'm going to try it again. And that's what you got to do. You got to do that. And I'll tell you, there are some fantastic songs on Chinese Democracy. It's fantastic. Now, the funny part about it is, Slash cannot play the Chinese Democracy songs. He sounds absolutely terrible trying to play the songs because it's not his style of guitar. And I think he absolutely butchers them, and it's too bad. That's why I still believe they needed to keep Ron Bumblefoot Thal in GNR or DJ Ashba or both of them. But yeah, that's the truth. Chinese Democracy was a great album. Fantastic album. We got 26 seconds left. Thank you to Apollo, Jenny, Ed Clater, Chad, and Andrew for the amazing super chats. Remember, it's a great way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. So thank you. And Varley Ventura is going to join us here again. I don't know why. She eats breakfast for dinner. So here we go. We passed the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you miss portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor. Hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on tonight with Varla Ventura, Our Cryptid World, a new monthly feature we have here with one of the greatest writers ever when it comes to the cryptid world. You can find all of her books on our website, varlaventura.net, or in any major bookstore. Thank you, Varla, for coming on in.
Oh, well, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. In spite of my preference for high-protein dinners.
Yeah, we're going to have to talk about that over some drinks in Vegas.
Yeah, maybe in Vegas. Yeah, we'll have to settle this score.
Yeah. It'll come down to, honestly, it's going to come down to roulette. That's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah, we'll let the wheel decide.
Exactly.
And then we'll both agree to just, from there on out, accept that as law.
Unless I lose.
No, we have to agree that whatever happens,
all right,
we won't critique the others' choices.
All right. Sounds good. And she will be giving lessons on how to eat breakfast foods for dinner, whereas I will be protesting with giant placards. We're talking ghosts and scary ghost stories. Poltergeist activity is something that I've never seen. And there's a lot of questions on what poltergeist activity is. There are many who believe that it is actually attached to the person in the house and their own energies bring it out, that it's not actually a spirit doing it. What do you think a poltergeist is, and do you have any poltergeist stories you could share with us?
Well, I've probably heard a lot of the same theories that you have, that poltergeists in particular can really be brought out by teenagers. That's a very common belief, that a teenager, or I guess because we think of teenagers as being full of angst and trying to figure things out and having a lot of frenetic energy, and they can fall prey or be kind of a conduit for a poltergeist. I don't think that is necessarily consistent across the board. I think that there's been some movies that have kind of, specifically, poltergeist, kind of playing that up, the idea that it kind of feeds through kids or teenagers. So in my experience, poltergeists aren't quite as, quite as aggressive as in some of the movies that we've seen. However, I have had stories of things being thrown across the room, chairs in particular being pushed or moved. We think that my friend that I was talking about earlier, that she has a poltergeist of some kind because of the several things that have happened. So this is a person who has had either lived in many haunted places or has had spirits follow her, or all of the above. And so she has experienced a lot of paranormal encounters. And we were talking about at what point we feel like this kind of changed and started maybe slipping into that poltergeist category. And the moving of objects in particular. So that I think is something that kind of takes it from it being a haunting to something a little more active and maybe a little more aggressive, like a poltergeist. Also more physical contact. So there have been numerous times of late where she has woken up feeling like either something was hovering right above her and holding her down. And these things are kind of coupled with one time she woke up actually in another room and wasn't really sure how she had gotten there. And this wasn't something that was medication related or other kind of, this was very, very abnormal. So, and just a lot of kind of something that might be veered a little bit more in the threatening category versus something that might just be like, oh, okay, yeah, there's a ghost here. So when you were talking before about like the ghost battling the ghost, we have been also speculating. So as I said, she's someone who has been haunted many times. I've included her stories in almost all of my books. I've got at least one Alex Benedict story in there along with Pirate Chris, because those are kind of like the two people that I constantly interview and we have a lot of discourse about the paranormal. And we wondered if, and this was her belief, that she believes that she actually has a ghost that travels with her. There has been paranormal activity in every place she has been since she was a young kid. So she believes she does have a spirit that is attached to her. She also believes that there have been other spirits because she's seen other things and the behavior has been slightly different. For example, she once had a spirit that used to move things around, but it was all in play. And we believe that was a spirit of a little child that was messing around with her and turning her sugar bowl over and kind of more mischievous. So then when you have to go and move it, the sugar spills out all over the counter, of course. So at this house where all of this kind of really intense stuff has been picking up in the last year, we have been talking about the possibility that her ghost is actually battling this sort of negative entity that's in the house. And it's battling actually to protect her. And so one of the freakiest things that happened was, it was straight out of like some kind of little short film. But we were texting each other one night, and she said her dog was really freaked out and was wouldn't leave her side and was staring, and she just sent me a picture on her phone of like, he's just staring in this direction. And so I'm looking at the picture, and of course I'm zooming in to see, and it's kind of like she's sitting on the couch, and there's like this view where she can see the doorway to the hall and then the doorway to the other bedroom, just a crack open. So I'm zooming in on the picture to see like, is there something in the bedroom, because the dog's directly staring and growling at it. And I look and I see a crystal skull candle holder that she has. I see it on the floor. And I think, in my mind, I think, maybe he's seeing the light glint off that, and that's kind of freaking him out. You know how dogs, they think someone's coming up to the house when they start to growl. And so I said, well, is he just growling at that candle holder? And she said, what are you talking about? And then the next text was like, the giant OMG, I don't know how that got. So this skull candle holder, she didn't see it. She had just sent this picture, and then I looked at it. I just thought she had put it there. Well, in fact, she hadn't put it there at all. It had been on the table in the other room. So this was when we kind of started thinking, wow, this is pretty intense, that these things are moving around. That was kind of a new thing. And that's when we kind of started wondering, especially with some of that, again, sleep paralysis and more aggressive kind of frightening behavior, things that were actually scaring her and making it difficult for her to sleep, waking up, not being able to breathe. Just some really intense activity there. So we were wondering if there's a ghost battle, sort of a paranormal battle going on where her ghost that has followed her around, or her spirit, whatever this is trying to protect her from this freaky, angry thing that is very angry and seems to really be interested in her. So,
all right. Question coming from Mennonite Abe, who is asking, Varla, have you ever heard of ghost insects?
I have not. I've heard of ghost cats and ghost dogs. I had a ghost cat in one of my apartments, but I've never heard of ghost insects. I mean, why not, right? I mean, they have such short lifespan. Wouldn't they just be crawling everywhere all the time?
I have a good story.
Okay.
All right. So at the museum where we did our tours prior to COVID, one of the idiots who is on the board that runs the museum, he doesn't believe in the paranormal. And even though we have raised $14,000 for this museum over 3 years, he's had the audacity to say that because he was a firefighter for 35 years, he knows everything and the paranormal doesn't exist. And therefore, all the photographs that our guests have taken over the years have doctored them. We doctored the photos. So, anyways, the museum had this old jail cell. And in the Clydesdale barn, he had this really idiotic idea, an idiot with an idiotic idea, to put the jail cell up, to tear down a couple of the horse stalls, including one where we actually may have caught the face of a ghost horse, and turn it into a jail cell. And their theory was we could lock people in there and we could get them out for charity with donations. Well, the first 4 months that this jail cell had been in there, they raised a whopping $68. To hell with the $1,000 a month we were bringing in for a tour, because the $68 was more important over 4 months. That's good mathematics right there. Yes, I am bitter. Anyways, we investigated that. I brought my buddy Merle up, and we investigated it. And we had 2 others with us. They were standing in the jail cell, and Merle and I were standing about 8-9 feet back from the jail cell, and we watched this giant shadow spider crawl along the ceiling. Like, this shadow spider was at minimum 4 feet long to 5 feet long. And we watched it crawl along the ceiling right in front of the jail cell. And then it went into where this tarp was. And then it scurried back, like a spider